Hey guys, so as you may know, one of the tests that's been kind of popular lately, and in fact it's been kind of popular for a while, and it's been used for a while, but it's become more popular among the MBTI community and other personality communities as a test that is sometimes said to have more of a scientific basis than other tests, is the Big Five test. I refer to it, and I will refer to it in this video, as the ocean test, because it basically tracks 5 variables that correspond to the ocean letters. So openness to experience, conscientiousness, extroversion, agreeableness, and neuroticism. So on these 5 traits, it's interesting to ask ourselves, how would an INFJ, the average INFJ, perform? What would be the results? Of course, there's going to be variety across different people, different subtypes of INFJ, but I think that at least for 4 of the 5 letters, we should expect the results to crowd around the same percentiles, right? So if we start with openness to experience, well, the interesting thing is that sometimes people think that the more of an N type you are, the higher you're going to score on the openness to experience variable. But the thing is, I think that in fact openness to experience is not necessarily. It's going to be a score for INFJs that is not too low, but also not too high. I think in the range of 60 or something like that, 60th percentile, because INFJs are also creatures of habit, and they experience alienation from external reality. So since openness to experience, as far as I can understand, tracks the engagement of external reality and being open to these new experiences, while INFJs do a lot of filtering. So of course they are curious beings by nature, they interrogate the world, they interrogate reality, but they still will tend to retreat to their comfort zone, much more say than extrovert perceivers, including SE dominance. On the second variable, which is the conscientiousness variable, well, INFJs, we've discussed this before, they are in some ways the least J of the J type. So I'd expect them to score around 50, again, between 40 and 60 in terms of conscientiousness. I think that, you will obviously find INFJs who are a bit more conscientious than others, but also INFJs that are not that conscientious. In terms of the third variable, so extroversion, well, INFJs are not particularly extroverted. They're also not the least extroverted of the introverts. So I'd say somewhere between 25 and 45% or percentile is where you would expect to find the vast majority of INFJs. You will occasionally come across INFJs that are extremely introverted and will be more around the 5th or 10th percentile, but the majority probably will be between 30 and 40. In terms of agreeableness, well, again, we're talking about INFJ as a type that is quite agreeable, but is not the most agreeable of all the types because of this kind of unflinching tendency that the possession of NI dominance lends them. So I would expect them to score somewhere between the 60th and 80th percentile, but probably around this, like 60th to between 60 and 70 probably for most INFJs. But really taking into account that there are INFJs who are not really that agreeable, even though they are F-types, and who would score below the 50th percentile. So INFJs, for example, that are heavily solipsistic. If we imagine that it's possible that Nietzsche might have been INFJ, which is an idea that I promote in my books, including my new book on the INFJ, The Infinite Soul, which, by the way, you can still get. It's actually fresh out of the oven, so of course you can get it. INFJ Life in the Modern World, on how to lead a life that is purposeful, meaningful, and rich in a world that is often seen as hostile to us INFJs, that is. So if you have got the book but not dropped a review, please consider dropping a review. Really helps, okay? This is the sequel to the Ecstatic Soul, which you might be familiar with. Check out the reviews, there's lots of them, they're very positive, on the INFJ mind, INFJ consciousness. How does it feel? What is it like to have an INFJ mind? as far as I know, it's the deepest investigation of that question. So consider getting it if you haven't yet. The two books obviously go together. But to come back to the notion of agreeableness, I think that an INFJ solipsist in general is probably more likely to be disagreeable than, say, an INFJ adaptive submissive INFJ, according to my quite private, well, not private, but personal kind of nomenclature. In terms of the spiritualized INFJ, you would expect them to score fairly high in agreeableness as well, perhaps less than the adaptive submissive. But in a sense, their agreeableness would be more genuine because it would not be dominated by the desire not to ruffle any feathers and to avoid conflict. They'd be quite comfortable with the possibility of conflict, but they're agreeable in a manner that reflects their peace of mind. Now, the last variable is, in a sense, also the most interesting because it is literally, I think, the most variable for INFJs, and that is the N letter, the neuroticism trait. So I think that there's going to be a lot of variety. There's INFJs that, are not particularly neurotic, and there's INFJs who are quite highly neurotic, and then there are INFJs who are kind of in the middle. So of course, those who are not highly neurotic will be more emotionally stable, will have better emotional regulation, and unfortunately, in a sense, at that level, not all INFJs are equal, because I think the neuroticism, trait is not as correlated with type as perhaps some of the other traits are that Ocean, the Big Five model, measures. So it depends a lot on genetics and depends a lot on your childhood, at least so far as the psychological theories go. So again, the idea is that you can probably reduce your level of neuroticism in the course of life, and if you are a spiritualized INFJ, you're going to display relatively low neuroticism. So it's also a challenge to try to think in terms of, can that be possible? What happens? Does that mean that spiritualization entails changes in like brain chemistry and things like that? Those are interesting questions that we can pose, but I think they remain open-ended at the moment. Okay, so that was that was my little exploration of how I think INFJs would perform on the Big Five / Ocean test. Let me know in the comments what you think, if you've taken it perhaps, and share your results with us if you're comfortable. And I'll see you next time. Don't forget, I have a Patreon page, and my channel depends on your Patreon donations, so please consider supporting me. You can access bonus content, interact with me, suggest new videos. I do some young readings as well, and it really helps the channel going. So, it keeps the channel going. So thank you so much to my supporters, and thank you for considering that kind of support as well. Okay, see you next time, guys. Bye-bye.